My name is Wesley Ralph Greene, and I'll be interviewing Miss Rebecca Barnwell today. And it is Monday, October 23rd, and it is 2:35 p.m. on the campus of the University of South Carolina Aiken at the Ruth Patrick Science Education Center studio. And my interview assistant is Karen Bolton. And Rebecca, thank you for coming to talk to me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
So to start, I just wanted to maybe get some background about your early life and things like that. So when and where were you born?
I was born in Springfield, Missouri, and I was born many, many years ago. I'm feeling my age more and more every day. I was born in 1982, June 30th.
Okay. And did you grow up in Springfield, Missouri? Or?
I didn't. I was born there. I lived there for a short time when I was really young, but then my father, who was also in the military, when he decided what he wanted to do, he went to school, got a college degree, and we kind of bounced around a little bit, but I grew up mostly in West Plains, Missouri.
Okay, and can you describe West Plains to us?
Small town USA. So not much there. There still isn't much there. When I go back home, it's very small. We've got, I think probably the biggest store there is Walmart, and I think they have a Lowe's or something like that, but still very small. Definitely, there's still much of an agricultural community that surrounds the town, so a lot of people kind of commute into the area to work.
Okay, and were there any activities that you participated in while you were growing up, or?
I tried to stay active in things. I enjoyed the theater a lot, so I participated in that. Towards the end, I really wanted to get karate lessons, so I started babysitting so I could save some of my money, and my mom and I made a deal. She would pay for my uniform and for my tests if I could pay the regular fees for the weekly bit. So I did that for a little bit, and that was really exciting. There wasn't too much to do though in West Plains, so as far as extracurricular activities, there just wasn't a lot of options.
Okay, and you said your dad was in the military? He
was in the Navy.
Okay.
back in the 70s before I was born.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit more about some of the rest of your family when you were growing up? Or?
Sure. So my mom never graduated from high school. She got married really, really young, and they're still together. So I guess it wasn't a bad decision, but it did have an effect on how she felt about herself. I think that she always made education something. She wanted it for me, because I think in her lifetime she didn't get to fulfill what she wanted to do. So through me, pushing me to do more, I think that she really, really wanted me to get further in my education, and that's kind of what led me to join the military in some ways, because I had scholarships. I knew I could go to 2 years for free just based on my grades, but I wanted to go to a 4-year university. So I started looking around at what my options were, and the Army kept on coming up, and I thought, what a cool opportunity to get some real life experience, travel a little bit, maybe get to see parts of the world, and have my education paid for me. And so that was a big factor in me joining the military, was furthering my education. So my dad did go to college later on, and I saw how hard it was for him to repay those debts for school loans, and that was a big reason why I was looking for another way to finance my education.
Okay. And where'd you go to high school at?
West Plains Senior High. So not much imagination to the name, right? It's not named after anybody, but it was a good school.
And how would you describe your high school self?
Pretty much the same that I am now. I'm a very genuine, open person. I may have been more I didn't have a lot of self-esteem back then, but I think who does in high school? I don't think anybody truly, is confident in themselves or in their abilities. So I may have been a little bit more withdrawn, but definitely the shadow of myself was still there, that I am now. And I think I was always kind of geeky. I was kind of like the, art student who was sitting out to go paint while we're supposed to be having lunch or something. I loved my AP English class. I could talk about literature all day long, and I loved it. So, geek, I would say. But happy geek.
And you said that you did have some opportunities to go to 2-year schools, but you decided to go into the military.
I did. I was pretty much guaranteed a 2-year scholarship at the local university branch that was from, I think at the time it was like Southwest State, Missouri. But it was 2 years. And it wasn't, my top choice. I was actually looking at an art school in St. Louis. I really thought that would be the way I'd go, if not Columbia, which is another large school in Missouri. But the military seemed to be an exciting change.
So when did you enlist in the military?
Oh my gosh. I actually enlisted before I graduated. So I was actually underage. I had to have my parents sign for me, which is awkward. So I was 17. And it was a program, like a delayed entry program. So I was working out and getting ready, but I didn't actually leave until after my 18th birthday in August. So like August 2000 is when I actually started, I'd say, my military career.
Okay. And where did you go for basic training when you joined?
I actually came here to Fort Jackson. So, which is funny because Fort Leonard Wood is so much closer in Missouri, but Fort Jackson was where they sent me. I guess maybe so I couldn't run away as easily.
So you lived mostly in the Midwest before then? Or?
Yes.
So was it tough coming to the South and having to deal with the weather conditions and stuff like that?
The fire ants. I was like, what are these things? And I swear they strategically sat us down on anthills everywhere we went. So I think that was hard. And we still have like the sticky heat that they do here, that like really humid heat. So that wasn't too much of a change. But the sand, like, oh my gosh, everywhere you go is like a beach, but without the good stuff, like water and fun. So it was an adjustment, but not a bad one.
Okay. And what were some of your memorable experiences from basic training?
From basic training? Mm-hmm. Definitely the gas chamber. I had no idea how much mucus was actually inside my body until it all came out at once, and it was horrid. So I don't know if you know much about like basic training. They have you kind of march in to a room where they have these like kind of like a curtain, like the plastic ones. Like, have you ever gone to a grocery store and you see like the hanging sheets of plastic? They had that over the doors, and it had 2 entrances, one in the front and one at the end. And then there's a guy sitting there at the table with like, it looked like a coffee can to me, basically, but it was full of this concentrated gas that they put in there. And it's to help you build confidence in your equipment, because you have to put on the gas mask, clear it, and then they make you take it off so you know what it's like, and then you put it back on and I can breathe again. It did not work out that way for me. The moment I took off, and I was really confident going in because I was like, it's all a mind game, I'm gonna be good, I just have to take this off, say my social security number, say my name, I'll be fine. The moment I took my mask off, my body just went, I was like totally in shock. I could breathe in, but I couldn't breathe out. Like, it was because the mucus had built up so fast, I couldn't get it out. And so the drill sergeant comes up to me, standing in front of me, and is like, social security number, and I'm like, and all of a sudden there were like little pinpricks of black that I could see. I'm like, I'm gonna pass out right in front of the drill sergeant. He grabbed me by my shoulders, hit me against the wall, and like, I kid you not, a whole nother person came out my nose and mouth, and it was disgusting, probably the grossest thing, but I got that mask on and, finished the task, but it was probably the worst part. And so, in that way, the most rememberable. I thought I might, pass out and die in the gas chamber. But there's also some cool stuff too, like we do exercises where they take you out at night and they're shooting. You can see the tracer rounds and you have to like low crawl, and it feels very realistic, and they're playing these loud sounds of explosions and stuff. That's fun. Digging foxholes. I didn't mind digging. And the long walks. I do remember one time we'd always have, there's a lot of downtime in the military, and they don't really tell you that. You think it's always like constant go, but no, they just keep you awake a lot and make you just stand in line or sit down and polish boots or something. So we were supposed to be polishing boots, but I was a little tired. And so I had fallen asleep, basically like sitting down, and I woke up and there were the shiny pair of boots sitting in front of me. So I knew right away, this is a drill sergeant. So like I kind of looked up, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Amen, drill sergeant," just saying a prayer. And it was pretty intense. But I'd have to say that none of the memories that I have were so terrible that I don't feel like I grew from them. I think I grew from everything.
Okay. And do you remember any of your fellow recruits or any of your commanding officers, drill sergeants?
Yes. Gosh, now remembering names is probably not the best. I do remember I made really good friends with a guy who I think went into like communications, like radio stuff, and his name was Daniel Kemp. And like we just really hit it off. We were in the same squad, and we were able to like just talk. And that like during our downtime, we just chilled. And I remember thinking that, like how incredible his life was, because both of his parents were deaf. And so like this being out in the military and everything, I think he felt like his parents were missing out because he couldn't call them like we could call our parents. And I remember thinking, man, that's crazy.
That's tough.
So yeah, that was good. We had a lot of guys like that were actually in the Army band, so they were there. That was their job, was to play an instrument, but they still had to go through basic training and everything. So I remember those guys, hanging out with them a little bit. There were a lot of women. My bunkmate, I cannot remember her name, but I think that was one of the most eye-opening experiences for me. Coming from small town Missouri, we don't have a lot of people of color at all. Like I think there was one African American family in my entire town, and I think they had 2 kids, but neither one of them were in my grade. So joining the military, all of a sudden, not only am I meeting these people and talking to them, I'm taking showers butt naked, in the personal spaces. And my bunkmate, she was an African American woman from a big city who had joined the military to make her life better. And like her experiences and everything, I learned so much. I didn't realize like how sheltered I was in a lot of ways. She had a really tough life where she was a single mother. She was working as a stripper and was basically able to afford to survive based upon the money that she was making from stripping and a couple of guys who were taking care of her. So for her to join the military, it was an act of freedom that she was able to take care of herself and to take care of her kid. And I just thought, that's mind-blowing. Here I am, just graduated high school. I don't have any of those sorts of responsibilities. And so it was, the diversity of being in the military was amazing.
That's good. And so where'd you go after basic training?
So after basic training, I have to tell this story. So this is probably one of the most upsetting things for me while I was in the military. I studied 4 years of French when I was in high school. And they have a test that you have to take for certain jobs in the military. It's called the Defense Language Aptitude Battery. And I was miserably sick when I went from my small town to St. Louis, which is a good, like 5-6 hour drive. And I knew I was going to miss a lot of class. And remember, said I was a geek, so I don't want to miss classes. So I was sick, took the test anyway, and did miserably. I shouldn't have done it. Well, the guys that are there, the recruiters, were like, don't worry about it. You have foreign language experience from high school. You're going to be fine. What I didn't know is that the person had written, instead of 4 years of French, they wrote in every document that I had 4 years of Spanish. So I got in, but they automatically determined I would be a Spanish linguist. And I didn't find this out until after I went through all the basic training. So then I went to the Defense Language Institute in California and started a whole nother foreign language there. One I did not want to learn. I can't tell you how, but I did not want to learn Spanish. Mainly because I felt like I could go anywhere and learn Spanish. I'd go to college. I'd go to Mexico. I felt like I wanted to learn something that was more foreign, or maybe I just didn't feel like Spanish was exotic enough. I was hoping for Russian or Chinese, or so going to California, which was awesome, but Spanish not so awesome. I got to use it a lot while I was there, and it is really like a college lifestyle while you're at the language school. So that was nice, and because I had Spanish, I didn't have to study as much as some of the other guys. So I really got to see more of California. I went to San Francisco and San Diego and Las Vegas, and I went to different places because I had the time. But so I guess it's not all bad. I didn't like Spanish, but I did like living in California.
So you were at Fort Irwin, California, correct? Is that where you were?
Actually, in the beginning, when I left basic training, I went to learn my language as part of my furthering my training in my MOS. And once I learned the language, I had to go to Texas to learn how to use the language. So my job, even though I was learning Spanish, I wasn't an interpreter, I was an interceptor. So that means that my job was to basically be a professional eavesdropper and capture audio of the enemy. So and in this area, target theater is probably usually going to be Latin America, Mexico, and we don't. Spain's an ally, so we don't really have any issues there, or any, and mainly, so is Mexico and much of Latin America. But the war on drugs was really the focus for our theater of operations. Okay. So now, did I get to use my Spanish a whole lot in my intercepting job? No. So after I learned how to listen to a bunch of cuts and stuff while I was at Goodfellow Air Force Base, that's where I was in Texas, I was then assigned to my unit, which was Fort Irwin, California, and that's where the National Training Center is. I actually was assigned to Op 4. I don't think they have the same thing anymore, but Op 4 stands for Oppositional Force. So basically, other units, before they would deploy or on a regular rotation, would come to the National Training Center to fight us, which was the fake oppositional force. So we would be training them by fighting them. And so I was assigned to an MI company, and we were using older equipment, but we were still collecting transmissions and helping our guys fight the good guys. It's kind of strange, right? As time went, though, and we became more involved in the conflict in Iraq after when 9/11 happened, I was actually in training in Texas, and that was a pivotal thing. Everything changed, right? Like all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I joined the military. This is real now. I could be sent. We went on immediate lockdown once the Pentagon was hit. It really became real really fast. So when I went to my station, they had traditionally did oppositional forces as a MI unit. But what they were finding is, as we were sending guys over to Iraq, the biggest thing that they were running into was a language barrier. Well, they said, hey, we've got a whole platoon of people who speak Spanish. Even though Spanish is not as exotic as Arabic, it can still give those guys training when they go to the actual war field, so the battleground. So that was our job, was to be civilians on the battlefield. Sometimes we were the media, sometimes we were sometimes terrorists. But I think the majority of my military career was actually being an actress, and I received a lot of awards for it, so I can't complain. It was fun for me.
That's good. And were you ever deployed overseas?
I was. I went to Iraq. I was stationed in Mosul, part of the headquarters. At the time, I was no longer in the MI platoon that had kind of dissolved. We were spread out. And I went to work with our RSS, which is, I have to remember, basically the guys who take care of the support So it was regimental support staff. So I started working there, and then we were deployed as part of the main headquarters in Mosul, Iraq.
Okay. And what were kind of your initial emotions when you found out you were going to Iraq?
Mixed. Part of it was, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little scary. You know, you're going somewhere and there's a chance that, you know, you might not come back, and you hear a lot of horror stories about units that were there in the past in the same area. The unit right before us had a attack on their DFAC. Somebody had smuggled in, I don't know, a grenade or something, but it was a suicide bomber. And that it hurt a lot of people. So it was like coming into this area, they had all this, you know, extra security around certain key buildings, and that made it a little bit scarier. But part of me was also excited because at this point I'm married to my husband, and we are actually stationed at 2 different stations. He's in Fort Carson, Colorado, and I'm at Fort Irwin, which is a pretty good distance away. So we were only able to see each other if we flew or met in the middle, usually in Utah. Not the ideal way to have a marriage. So I was kind of actually excited that we were going to be closer together when we were in Iraq. His unit was also deployed. And they were in the same theater of operations as I was. So we were able to see each other, ironically, more often in a war zone than we were when we were stateside.
Okay.
So
Was it kind of still tough being deployed, both of you being deployed at the same time?
Oh, absolutely, because I think in some ways worse. Being in the headquarters, I heard about what was going on in every different area, and every time I'd be like, "Is Matt there?" You know, Matt's my husband's name, so I'd be like, you know, is that where he's at? Like, what's going on there? So yeah, it's still hard. And I mean, there are moments where, you know, it can get quite scary. We had a couple of mortar attacks where they were actually firing into our living area, and you know, fortunately, I was always in a safe area where I could get to a bunker really fast. But we did lose a soldier, and I mean, it was 1,000,001 shot, but you know, it still happened. The mortar came in and hit the barrier wall. They would set up these walls in front of the bunkers to try to prevent that. So if it landed in front, it wouldn't burst out. But it hit just perfectly on the corner of that wall that it burst inside the bunker. And we lost a soldier there, as well as some guys who were contract workers. So I mean, there were moments that were scary. We had a lot of injuries too. You know, people getting shrapnel in their eye, and they went home. We had the lieutenant I actually worked with got a pretty good bit of shrapnel in his arm, and it was strange because your body rejects it. It's like it shouldn't be there, so it pushes out the foreign objects. So like every now and then, like a piece of shrapnel would just be like hanging out, and he'd pluck it out, and it was like so casual, you know. But I was very fortunate that I never got hurt, and I didn't ever feel like I was in immediate danger, even though I may have been. And that might just be my optimism. So
and what was your job while you were deployed in Iraq?
What wasn't my job? Okay. It started out where I was supporting headquarters, basically a paper pusher, because I had a top secret clearance, so I could handle anything. You know, as far as getting documents from one place to another. But where I shined was that I definitely grew a good relationship with the local national linguists, the people that we were hiring to be our translators. And I became the liaison between the military and the company that was providing the linguist to us, the contract company. And they changed their name several times. It was Titan, and I think it was L3, and who knows what they're called now. But they were the people who went out and actually vetted the people, and then I would put in our orders. Like, basically, I need this many guys in this area. And I did that for a while until they realized that I was enlisted and not an officer. Remember the lieutenant I told you that had the shrapnel? He and a captain had a severe disagreement in another department, and things went physical. And I don't know who hit who or who pushed who. I don't know, but it got the solution was to separate them, and I was lucky and got the new lieutenant. And so they basically were like, well, we need to put him somewhere, and so lo and behold, I'm filling in the job of a major, and I shouldn't be. So they went ahead and assigned him to the project, and a lot of the pressure was taken off of me at that point, and I got to relax a lot more, and basically went back to pushing paper.
Did you have like any interactions with the locals in Iraq while you were there?
Oh, absolutely. Being a liaison had a big part of that. There were even times when people would come to the gates looking for a job as an interpreter, and they were asking for me. But of course, the guys at the gates are like, "Who's this person? Who are they asking for?" And it was just because I my name had gotten around. Partly also because I'm from Missouri. In Mosul is kind of in northern Iraq, and there's a large Kurdish population that's further north. So when I would tell people that I'm from Missouri, they heard al-Missouri, and they automatically assumed I was from a Kurdish tribe. And I had dark hair, and I had some features that may have led them to think that surely she's Kurdish, So people started calling me cousin, and I couldn't figure out why. And I really well accepted, bringing me gifts and food, and I'm like, this is awesome. And then somebody explained to me, they were like, well, you're related to them. And I'm like, what? And so I had to start carrying around a map of the United States with me so I could actually show them what I meant when I was saying Missouri. Because they know big cities like New York. Everybody seemed to know Las Vegas. I don't know why, but Los Angeles. They know some of the larger cities and some of the larger states. But Missouri is not something that they're talking about in Iraq. There's nothing there, right? So, and so it was like I had to explain that every time. I also had a group of linguists that I was their direct supervisor, and basically we would have documents that needed to be translated either for us to use as intel or for to be disseminated outward or to help our units use information. So I would be able to give them, as long as it was not classified. I couldn't give them any classified information because they were local nationals and they didn't have that classification. But I did. I would give them work, and they would steadily type. People would bring things, but I made sure that they were taken care of. And at one point, there was we had good relationships with the Kurdish in the north, but they had their own militias. And this one guy that I think we were trying politically to become friends with had a son that wanted to badly be with us, and I think I was maybe an unpaid babysitter for a little bit. He was college age, but just really did not understand the dynamics between our position there in Iraq, and so he was angry and hot-headed and was starting fights all the time, and I had to come to his rescue. So. But so really I did a lot of different things, but mainly liaison for the local national linguists and the units that needed them.
So the interactions, they were mostly positive, you'd
absolutely, almost all the time. There was a couple of situations where just the cultural differences from me being a female and male local nationals could be problematic, because where I'm a very smiley person, I smile at everyone, and I always make direct eye contact. In their culture, that can be very misinterpreted. It's either disrespectful for me to do so as a woman, or they think I'm coming on to them. And for them, it was very unfathomable that I was married for 3 years and didn't have a bunch of babies. I was always asked, where are my kids? If you're married, you should have kids. Why are you doing this? You shouldn't be in the military. And so there was always that disconnect on the cultural side with me being female. That it made things uncomfortable, especially if they thought that I was being forward with them, because you got to think they don't have experience with American women. It's only through movies, TV shows, and think about what happens. There's always the heroine, she falls in love with the guy and they're in bed, and so it's hard for them to think that, well, maybe that's just the way that American women are, that we just, are, fall in love in an instant sort of thing. And so me being an open and warm personality often led to issues where I had to be very curt and explain, no, I'm not interested in you, and no, I'm not running away, even though you have a lot of money, sort of thing. It's kind of weird, but yeah, I'd say mostly favorable. I had the best birthday party thrown for me ever, like a 3-layer cake from the city, and Kurdish music was playing, and it was more of a party, I think, for them than it was for me. But it was nice to see everybody let loose, even in kind of, not the best of circumstances, and it was just a really good time, and I'm thankful that they accepted me so well.
That's good. And did you also have a good relationship with your fellow soldiers?
Yes. I think I always had a good relationship with I think everybody. I will say that there were some situations where I did have to stand up for the local national population a couple of times, because it's hard for soldiers to separate who the enemy is outside and who is our ally on the inside. And I got ridiculed a couple times because I came to the defense of our linguists. I'm like, they are putting their life on the lines, even more so than some soldiers. I mean, they're not only putting their lives on the line, but their families' lives. I mean, if it's found out that they're helping us, they can terrorize their family. Your family's safe stateside. So, it was very hard for them to differentiate. And I think only once did I have to go to somebody, a higher chain of command, because they were being so ridiculously abusive to people that we were hiring to help us. So, but for the most part, I would say absolutely. We had another situation in another area because remember I said I was kind of at a headquarters, so there was an area I had to go to, and I'd heard stories about how they were treating the linguists there, which was very similar to the way they were treating like captives. I was like, why are they being treated the same way? And of course they don't. Nobody wants to. I couldn't fill the positions because people didn't want to work for them because they were mistreating them. And I went there, and at first the person who was in charge there, it was somebody with more rank than I, was very upset with me and said, well, you can't just walk into our skiff without proper things. So that's the same reason why they can't walk around on our fob. And I said, actually, you're incorrect. I have a top secret clearance, and I can walk into your skiff right now if I wanted to. And that's the purpose of having a badge. You need to badge these linguists so that they can move around, so they can use the bathroom without having to ask for permission. And that went over somewhat well. Things got fixed, but they didn't get fixed, right away. And it was a very uncomfortable situation for me to have to talk to somebody with more rank than I. So.
And what were some of your memorable experiences in Iraq?
Well, the birthday party, that was awesome. The mortar attacks were pretty, intense. We had a few of them. Those were always kind of scary, especially because when they're really close, you can't tell if we're shooting out or if they're shooting in. So it's like who's shooting who at that point, and it gets a little chaotic. Towards the end, they got better at letting us know when they were going to be firing out. But in the beginning there, it was kind of like, what's going on? Let's see, my roommate, we came home and there was like a bullet laying on her bed because they do celebratory fire there. Like, if like somebody gets married or something exciting happens, they'll like fire up into the air. So apparently a bullet came up and went straight down through our roof and into her bed. So it was like, that's kind of odd. I really just had a good time getting to know the population. Another funny situation, remember, culturally with women and men, were moving the linguists that were working for me for the translation of documents and everything to another area that was more accessible for all of the units and the people that were working in our main building. It was like an old castle of Stomps. That was also cool. Seeing all these like really, really fancy buildings that we were working in, it was really cool. Sad though, because people weren't allowed to look at them, unless they, you could chance death, because Saddam and his reign was so oppressive. And I remember talking to the Kurdish people about attacks and stuff that were done. You probably heard of like Chemical Ali, like the brother, I think it was like a brother or brother-in-law of Saddam, who actually practiced chemical warfare on the Kurdish people and killed women and children. And I mean, it was so sad to see what some of these people have been through. The Kurdish population itself is kind of sad, because Kurdistan doesn't exist except for in the hearts and minds of the people that are living there. And they have these maps and flags of Kurdistan, but Kurdistan's not a recognized country. It's a people without a home, a nation without a country. And that's eye-opening and wow, talk about some crazy world problems. We have no idea what that's like here in the United States. We have so many freedoms and culturally. So I was going to tell a story about we were moving those linguists, and we were cleaning out the old area, and there were in that room there was a unit that was there with soldiers, and then the linguists were kind of there with them. And so one of the female soldiers before had like a box with like some tampons in it. Okay, and I know that this is a little awkward story, but I had told them that we just need to clean everything out. And so one of the guy linguists was like, I think these belong to you, and was chastising the female linguists, and they were horrified because they didn't know what it was. They had taken out like the little, there's like an instruction booklet and like every single one. They had taken it out, opened up a tampon, had like, they had literally no idea what this was supposed to be. And I had to give some ladies who were older than me like talk about using tampons. Very uncomfortable. And they were horrified, like just absolutely mortified, because nobody should go up there but your husband, right? And so it was like, oh, and young girls use these too? Like it was crazy. So very memorable, because I was like red-faced, embarrassed, trying to explain like what this is and how it's used, and like doing the whole tutorial, like showing like how it functions. Oh gosh, it was they were just mortified, and I was like, wow, this is a different country. It's a whole different world. And yeah, I explained that, girls is at 13, 14, yeah, that was just, oh my gosh, so different.
And how long did you end up staying in Iraq?
I was there for a little over a year. We got extended, and I can't remember how much longer, but it was just a little bit. It wasn't that bad, but like a year.
And when you left, how did you, what were your feelings, emotions when you had to leave?
I really had grown close with a lot of people, and I was worried about us leaving and this disruption. I knew there were more people that were coming in, but there was always word that we were going to pull out of Iraq, and it just seemed like things were still unstable and worrisome, and so I worried about the people I was leaving behind, the linguists that I had worked with and grown to love and got to know their families and everything. I worried about them, what would happen. So coming back to the United States, it's you don't realize that you get used to this like constant, I want to say like balls to the walls, but that's what I was say. Like it's constant, like everything is, you're in danger all the time. So you're like, and you're constantly doing things. And when you come back to the United States, it's like, I'm safe. And nobody had any patience, like waiting in line at the grocery store. driving was it was like mind numbing. It's like, oh my God, why are people just getting out of my way? I got things to do. I've got places to go. And so going from like this like complete rush 24/7 to like this laid back, chill, I'm safe, everything's cool. It was really hard. And I was surprised at how hard it was. I remember they would fire the cannon off in the morning, like that was the tradition on our base. But that first time I heard it, I immediately sat up and I was looking for my weapon, like, this is go time, and I'm like, wait, I'm stateside. This is good. They're just about to play, Revelry, and we're gonna get up and it was just really, really, really different coming back. The pace of life.
So where'd you go after you came back from Iraq?
I came back. I was back in California at Fort Irwin, and shortly after I got out, once we got back and we were settled, I stayed for a couple months, but I didn't change around or anything because I knew I was going to be getting out soon.
Okay.
So mainly to be with my husband. That was we decided that either we're going to get together and make this work, or we were going to make career military lives, and we decided that our relationship was good. So, and I'm glad we did. But every now and then I miss it, and I'm like, maybe I should do it. I got a little bit more time. I could still enlist right now, but that time is becoming shorter and shorter every time I think about it. But so it's unlikely that I'd go back. But I did get out, and I went to Colorado Springs to go live with my husband at Fort Carson.
Okay. And you've kind of mentioned it a few times, but what are your thoughts on being a woman in the U.S. Army? Is it difficult or easy? Or?
I think it's getting better every day. I think that, since the time that I got out, I think there's been some great strides in things. Like we always had these trainings about sexual harassment and everything, but how well it was actually adhered to was a totally different thing. I had some very uncomfortable situations while I was in the military that I totally inappropriate. And I think that nowadays those would have been looked at differently than they were back then, But I'm also lucky that I was in a military intelligence unit, where I think that I think maybe we were a bit more understanding and sympathetic towards one another, and we had more diversity than some other units. So like an infantry unit where you didn't have women, when I was in, for them who, you have these like sexual harassment, trainings, but you're never around women, so it's like they have it, but it goes through one ear and out the other. Whereas in units that are more blended, I think that there's a little bit higher understanding and maybe, but there were still moments where it was rough. My board for promotion was one of the most embarrassing, belittling things in my entire life. I actually had a command sergeant major tell me that if I was his daughter, he'd take me out back and show me a thing or two. I still don't know what that means, but I found that to be very derogatory and uncomfortable. When I left, you have to have a sponsoring NCO with you when you go towards the board. When we left, he was like, "Do you want to go to JAG?" Like I was totally blown away by the way that everything went, and mainly aimed at me because I was female, and the command just wasn't supporting, and I was afraid to go then to talk to somebody in the legal department. I wish I would have, in hindsight, because that guy he shouldn't have said that, and he shouldn't have been in charge of such a professional part of my career, really. So in hindsight, I wish I would have said something, but I decided not to. And there was a couple moments too where I right before I deployed, I was on a special detail where a sergeant, I think he was a staff sergeant. He was definitely a couple ranks above me, and we were all working on getting things packed up into the vehicles, and he dismisses everybody, but he says specifically, "Barnwell, I want you to stick around. I need to talk to you." And I'm thinking, oh, okay, did I pack something wrong? I'm thinking, what did I do? Why is the command sergeant major want me to stick around, or the staff sergeant want me to stand around? I don't really even know this guy. And basically he knew that our units were deploying together. And so he made a proposal that, hey, while we're both away from our significant others, why don't we hook up? And I mean, this is the person who's at that moment in charge of me. And it was, I didn't even know how to respond. I was so caught off guard, and I didn't even know. I had to ask clarifying questions. I was like, what do you mean? Be friends? What do you mean? And no, he was literally suggesting that we should have sex because we're both going to be lonely, and this is a good way. It's good for both of us, And I'm like, you're in charge of me. And when I went back to my unit after I was down on that detail, I told the sergeants that were normally in charge of me, and they both laughed it off and said, "Oh, he's like that. He was just joking with you. He wasn't serious." But it was pretty dang serious when I was there. And he talked to me about one more time while we were in theater, and I said, "You know what my answer was the first time? It's not happening." But the fact that it was laughed off so easily, that was hard, especially because these are the people that are, I did everything right, I told the right people, and, it's like, it's fine. Did he touch you? Well, no, he didn't touch me, but, that would have made the big difference. I shouldn't be offended because he didn't rape me in the parking lot, it was, just a proposal of, sex. You said no, right? So it's all good. And I'm like, but that was totally inappropriate, but so yeah, it can be difficult, but I think it's getting better. I think just in society in general, we're getting better. Think about how many times in recent media that we hear about, the whole thing with Weinstein, the guy that's, being ridiculed in Hollywood for how he was treating women. I think when we continually this is being brought in the media, I think it causes change. So.
And you said you went to Colorado after you left the military?
I did. It's beautiful there.
And so what did you do in terms of your career/education when you left the military?
Absolutely nothing for a little bit. I knew my husband was also planning to get out, so we were basically just waiting for his time to be up. I worked out still and kind of just hung out, played video games, did a whole lot of nothing, because I knew we weren't going to be staying long. And when he did get out, we came here. This is my husband's hometown, Aiken. So we came here to live, and at first I worked some small part-time jobs while I continued school. I went to Aiken Tech first, and then I came here to USC Aiken. And I'm glad I did. I thought the campus was beautiful. I love the smaller class sizes. I started out as an education major. I thought that I wanted to be a high school English teacher, but I found myself more and more feeling like I wasn't challenged by my education courses, but I loved my English courses, so I decided to switch to be just an English major. And I don't regret it. I love it. And so much so that I didn't want to leave higher education, and that's why I'm an advisor now.
Good. And so you chose Aiken not only because you were living here, but you liked the feel of the campus and everything like that?
Oh, yeah. Actually, the Veteran Success Center leader, he's not doctor yet, but probably will be soon, Mr. Rob Murphy was in a couple of my classes. We were actually classmates. And I think what they have now for the Veteran Success Center is tremendous, and what a wonderful opportunity. I wish that was there already in place when I started. I think I would have used my benefits a little bit better, more responsibly. I still graduated. I had a ton of credits when I transferred just because I did go to school whenever I could. I went to school. I was in California. I went to school before I left. My language credits did transfer, so I came with almost enough credits for a degree. It just nothing went together into one. So, I really enjoyed my time as a student.
That's good. And you said you have a bachelor's degree in English?
I do.
And you're currently
I'm working on my master's.
Is
right.
it in English as well?
No,
or?
I'm actually working on my MBA. So I work in the School of Business, and the opportunity came for a STEM and liberal arts MBA. It was a part-time program in the classroom, and I thought, wow, what an awesome opportunity to further my education. So I jumped on that program, and after this class I'll have 4, so I'm in operations management now, but I have 4 more to go.
And was it difficult for you to transition into college life after the military, or?
No, I don't think so. I think if anything, it was almost easier to transition into college life than it was for me to go into the military to begin with. I've always had a big interest, and of course, like I said way back earlier, my mom always, encouraged me to pursue education. So I felt very strongly about what I was doing. So it always felt like a good transition for me.
And do you think USC Aiken does a good job helping and supporting its student veterans?
Yes, right now, currently, absolutely. When I first started, that's questionable. I had no idea what I was doing when I first started. And Aiken Tech, I even less. Like, I had no idea how I was using up my funds, and I wish that I would have known more, because I think I would have had some money left over through my benefits to be able to pursue my master's degree, maybe at Columbia or something. But right now I'm getting tuition assistance, so I can't complain. So through the university, because I work here. So
that's good. And can you tell us a little bit about your current family?
Yeah, still with Matt, still my husband. Came here, we now have 2 kids, so I have, they just had birthdays. So last week, or Friday, was my son's birthday. He turned 8, and the Friday before, they're exactly a week apart, but not, they're years apart, but like their birthdays are a week apart. My daughter turned 3, so I got a little one, and I said my little one. He's getting bigger every day, but we're very happy here. My son's at Aiken Elementary, and my daughter goes to a local preschool, a Head Start program, and they're both doing really well.
And you said your husband was also in the military as well?
He was, yes. We were, part of the reason why we couldn't be stationed together is we were both linguists, but different areas of operation. So he was an Arabic linguist and I was a Spanish linguist. So he, once he got out, he decided that, he wasn't going to do anything with the language, and he's actually a police officer now for the city.
Okay.
So.
And was it beneficial for you to have somebody else in your life that kind of understood what it was being like in the military during the 21st century?
Sure, yes, absolutely. We could laugh over the same things and be like, oh, that's just like, this, yeah, definitely. And that, that's something that I don't think I think about enough, but, when you ask me, I'm really thankful for that, actually, to have somebody that could relate so well to how things, and maybe that's why I thought transitioning was so easy, because I had somebody.
Mm-hmm. Right. And what are some of your future goals and objectives?
Well, if I don't join the military again, because like I said, the window's getting small. I'd have to lose 80 pounds and get into shape again. I don't know if that's probably not going to happen. I definitely want to finish my MBA. That's the short term. I love what I do, working with students. I would love to maybe take it a step further and actually teach in a classroom. But I'm also open to being an entrepreneur. I'd love to be my own boss. I worked some part-time jobs, and one of them was retail. I like selling things. Selling things is fun, and you never take work home with you. Now I know that that's not true when you own your own business. Your whole life revolves around it, but I'd still like to give it a shot, maybe.
And overall, I guess as of right now, do you feel like your military service has changed you a good bit, or?
I think it's made me a stronger person, maybe more confident. I know what I can accomplish, if I put myself, apply myself to it. I also know physically, how far I can push myself, and I think that's important too. But But I think yes. I don't think I would be the same person without my military experience.
Was there anything else you'd like to talk about or mention that we might not have covered?
Oh, I'm sure I filled in a lot of blanks for you. I don't think so. I think everything went really well. You know, I'm still the same geek that I was, because military intelligence guys are geeks. Let me just tell you, we are not like any of the other units. You know, we watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail rather than Rambo or anything. You know, we're kind of weird. I remember at one point they were telling us that military intelligence was like intellectually was like the top 10% of the military, and I remember thinking, really, you know, because I never thought that I was that smart. I always felt like military intelligence might have been an oxymoron, but I think it, you know, in hindsight, it's true though. We had a broad range of interests, and so really being in my unit only helped cultivate a lot of things. So for me, you know, education-wise, I always felt like I could expand. So.
That's good. Well, thank you, Rebecca, for your time today.
Absolutely.
And for
My
your service to our
pleasure.
country.
It was very nice meeting you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you too.
I guess it's done.
All are good.